The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're very happy you could join us. We have here today Hadar Barir, Bringg's product manager and expert, to discuss the Bringg driver app and walk us through its features and capabilities. After the presentation, we'll move into a Q&A session, so feel free to enter your questions at any time into your display. Now, over to Hadar.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Glad to have you join us in today's webinar. And today we are going to talk about the Bringg driver app and take a short tour through the different functionalities of the app, how it is being used by the drivers, and also what are the values that a business and a driver can gain from using the Bringg driver app. So we will start with just a little bit high level about Bringg for those of you who don't know us yet. So Bringg is a platform to help companies, help businesses manage their delivery logistics in a smart and automatic way. Bringg would provide a business with visibility into where drivers are, what their performance is like. It will provide communication between the drivers and the customers, and we'll see a lot about that as we move along with the webinar. When we talk about Bringg and we talk about helping businesses manage their delivery logistics, businesses that need that have delivery logistics come from very different worlds. So Bringg supports today many companies in over 40 countries around the world, including restaurants and food delivery services on the one hand, handling quick on-demand orders and everything that has to do with food delivery. So the temperature is important, the timing is important. And then on the other hand, we have retail deliveries and e-commerce that have very different needs. When they talk about deliveries, they are more planned usually. And again, we'll see how how the driver app helps you and helps your drivers manage their day. Bringg works with third-party logistics, with healthcare, and also with services where the product being delivered is not an actual physical product, but a service person to perform any kind of service at your house, car, business, or whatever it would be. So looking a little bit about at the Bringg platform, we usually talk about three main players in the Bringg ecosystem. We have the dispatch, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen right now. The dispatch uses a web-based dashboard to manage the entire delivery operations. So dispatchers would use the dispatching dashboard, but also customer care personnel, all levels of management. And what they do with the dispatching dashboard is that they can dispatch orders to different drivers, optimize different routes, and get real-time feedback from drivers and customers throughout the day. Other than the dispatching dashboard or the management team, we have the drivers. The drivers, well, they can be drivers, walkers, couriers, service people. We have many names for them, again, depending on the business, but those would be the team members in your company that move around. So those would be the ones picking up the meal from a restaurant and delivering it to your end customer, picking up the parcels at the warehouse and delivering them, or arriving at the customer's house to perform any kind of installation service, for example. Those would be using a native mobile app, and we will talk today mainly about those drivers or couriers. And then the third player would be the customer, the end consumer of your product or service. In the Bringg world, out of the box, they would be using an HTML5. They will be provided an HTML5 experience, or they can use their own app where you can integrate the Bringg experience and the Bringg capabilities into an existing customer-facing app. So as I said, today we will focus on that middle player, the driver, and we'll start seeing a little bit about what the experience for a driver using the Bringg app is, and some key value points and functionalities for them. So first and foremost, the Bringg driver experience is given to your drivers using a mobile app. The app is available on Android and iOS operating systems. The drivers can use the app on their personal phone. All it requires is really one of those two systems and a data plan. Everything we do happens in real time. The updates come from the drivers in real time. And for the manager and the customer to know what's going on, it is important that the driver has network. So we'll look at 5 or 6 key functionalities for the drivers, and they will walk us through a driver's typical day. You'll see that some of those we mentioned before, the different industries or different verticals that our customers come from. You'll see that some of those are more suitable to one or more verticals, and I'll point that out. So we'll kind of walk through it and walk through a typical day of drivers from all those industries. So starting with the planning. Once a driver is assigned new orders to perform during the day, and again, we said they can either be assigned on demand or a planned day. For those drivers that plan their day in advance, so retail drivers, 3PLs, they are being assigned a batch of orders in the beginning of the day, and now they can plan their delivery route. They have multiple features that they can use in order to do that. We support real-time route optimization, looking at the most efficient route to arrive from point to point while making sure that the deliveries or services are arriving to the customers at the promised time. Drivers can optimize their own routes or can receive an optimized route from the manager, so really depending on your business. And you can also grant your drivers with the option to really manually order their route on the app, as we can see on the right side. And that's one of the main values to the driver with the driver app, that it allows the dispatchers or the managers sitting in an office or a central location to communicate very easily with the driver. They don't need to pick up the phone or anything. Every order assigned to the driver will pop up on the screen immediately. When we talk about on-demand deliveries, and the drivers start their shift not knowing or not always knowing what is the first delivery that they're going to perform, not to mention the entire day. Every time a new delivery is assigned to a driver, they will get a push notification, which we know is usually the best way to catch a user's attention. So, and it's also time. It saves time, so you don't need to text the driver or call them. Automatically, a push notification will be sent to the drivers, and it also allows a manager to get feedback from the driver. So, if I have drivers roaming around the city, and I now want one of them to perform this delivery, as you can see on the screen, to 480 Lexington, it's not enough for me to say, hey, Mr. Driver, here is a delivery, and forget about it. I want to see them accept. I want to see an acknowledgement by the driver that they are really going to perform this delivery. Otherwise, I might want to send it to someone else. Now, we were talking about the communication from the dispatching team to the driver's team, but another value point of this app is that the communication from the driver to the dispatching team, so to the dispatcher manager, etc. The drivers are asked, and they have the option to update the status of each order. So you can see on the screen, they can click when they start, when they arrive, and when they leave. They can add comments. They are requested to update on different things that happened along the way. They can cancel an order if the delivery failed for any reason and update you with the reason for the failure, because handling a failed delivery because the customer was not home is very different than handling a delivery that failed because the customer refused to accept, and you need to know that. The app lets the drivers very easily, very clearly know what they are required to do. And with their very simple actions, the dispatching team gets updated on everything that happened in real time. Every update, by the way, has a timestamp and a location stamp. So you really can afterwards look at the history or the activity of each order and know what happened according to those actions by the driver. On top of updating the status, sometimes you would want your driver to perform additional actions, usually for proof of delivery. You might want to collect signature. You might want to ask the driver to fill out a short form notifying you what happened throughout the delivery, or take a picture if it is an installation or some kind of setup that was required as part of the order, as part of the task for the driver. You can set up very easily different actions that can happen or that can be required from the driver to perform, and the app will make sure that they don't continue to the next step until they perform them. So really, a driver would be asked as soon as they arrive, and before they can click that they completed the order, they would be asked to add a customer signature, for example, and this will be a mandatory action that they need to perform. On top of that, if you have different orders or different services in your business, some of them require signature and some of them don't. You can specify for each order what are those mandatory actions required from the drivers, what is the proof of delivery required for that specific case, and the driver will not need to remember, but they'll be asked for the appropriate proof of delivery as they perform the delivery itself or the order itself. One of the important actions a driver needs to perform during the day, especially for parcel delivery and retail, in the context of proof of delivery, is scanning barcode. The app using the phone's camera allows the drivers to scan barcode and really validate that what they delivered is the right parcel, that they picked up everything that they were supposed to pick up. And again, it is to set different rules, make the scan mandatory or not, allow drivers to collect only part of what they were supposed to collect, or force drivers to collect everything that they were asked to collect in a pickup location, and so on and so forth. Using barcode scanning, so using the phone camera to scan barcode, can also provide the drivers with information about the order. So for example, we were talking before about route optimization and route planning. Once a driver used the app, the list on the app, to plan their route, so they ran route optimization, they looked at the map, they made some decisions based on that, and then reordered the list to fit the route that they're going to take. If they now have a large amount of boxes that they need to deliver, and they need to load their truck accordingly, the easiest way to do that would be if they knew what the route is. The scanning on the app allows them to match between a parcel, a box, an order, and the digital entity of that box. So as a driver, I would go and scan all of my boxes, and my app is going to tell me, the Bringg app is going to tell me which location in the route sequence this parcel belongs to, and it helps me stage my vehicle. And finally, we provide the drivers with some additional tools that so far we've been receiving only great feedback and a lot of compliments on, because drivers, when they're out there and they're the ones communicating with the customers, we often hear how difficult it is when they need to call the customer. When everything goes smoothly, it's very easy. But when they don't find the right door, when the customer is not home, when they need to communicate to someone, whether it is the dispatcher or the customer, they need to now exit the app that they were using, find a piece of paper where the customer's phone is written on, and dial that number. With the Bringg app, they really have all of those icons that you can see on the front screen, which help them communicate with the dispatcher, communicate with the customer, either via phone or SMS. They can navigate easily to the address. So if it's an address that they're not familiar with, all they need to do is click navigate and open their favorite navigation app, Waze, Google Maps, Apple Maps, whatever it would be, and navigate directly to the customer. So really for the drivers, we see that on one screen they get everything they need to know, everything they need to do in a very clear, structured way, and it helps them manage their own day and their own route. When we onboard new businesses that are starting to use Bringg, and we onboard the drivers especially, so once a business starts using the Bringg application, after the API integration that is required with the system, the next step would be onboarding the drivers and having them use the app. So we see that with the Bringg app, we experience a very quick onboarding of new drivers, not only when the company starts using Bringg, but also for new drivers that are joining the team. Since the app walks you through the process that you need to do with every delivery, since the app tells you what you need to do next, start, mark yourself as arrived, collect a signature, scan a barcode, and since the app lets you, with very simple graphics, perform different actions that help your communication, it's very easy to start working with as a driver with the Bringg app. We also see that with the Bringg app, since at the end of the day, the driver's location and the status of the order are visible not only to the dispatchers and management, but also to the customer. Customers are reacting very well to knowing, to this visibility, to knowing what's going on, who is coming to meet them, when are they going to get there. So when the customer looks at the app, they see a map, they see the driver's location in real time, and they see who the driver is. They see a name and a photo, and that creates a kind of feeling that they already know the driver. And we see an increase in tips following that. The drivers are usually very happy with this change, and so are we. And finally, we see that with this very clear process that the driver needs to perform on every stop, and also with the visibility, we see a quicker turnaround in pickup and in the customer location. So as we said before, when a driver arrives to a warehouse to collect multiple packages, being able to automatically optimize their route, then scan the items and stage them in a smart way in their truck, helps them leave the warehouse much faster. So we've seen sometimes a 75% reduction of time spent in warehouse, which is significant to drivers that should be spending their time on the
Thanks, Adar. We have a few questions from the audience, so we're going to start with, can you discuss a bit about how drivers are supposed to use the app when they are driving?
Sure, absolutely. So when drivers are driving, and that's one of the questions we get very often, when drivers are driving, we want them to be focused on driving, clearly. And there are many ways to even make sure that that happens. So first of all, what we expect from our drivers usually is to mark, to notify when they start driving from stop to stop. We expect them to do that when they're stationary, not while they're driving. It's usually once they leave the restaurant, once they leave the warehouse, once they leave the previous customer. They would click start. Let me just quickly go back so you can see what I'm talking about over here. So you can see here that there is a very clear large action button, and we expect them to notify once they start. From this point on, it really depends on the business and the operations. It is possible to ask the drivers to mark when they arrive and when they leave, or we can use the driver's location and recognize when the driver arrives at the destination and just mark them as there. When we the cases when we will ask the drivers to mark themselves as arrived and left, and when they leave, sorry, the location, are usually the cases when the drivers really need to stop, get out of the car, and do something additional, usually with the app. So if a driver needs to hand over a package to a customer and then collect signature, since they're holding the phone anyways and they're outside of their car, I would ask them to also mark, update the status of the order. In the food delivery or in the on-demand scenarios, we would usually just enable the automatic detection of location, and then have the drivers just notify when they start, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Adar. We have another question here. Is it possible for drivers to remove stops that no longer need to be completed as part of the tour or route that they're assigned?
Yes, it is possible, and again, it depends on the business flow or the operations. It depends on the operational decisions. It is possible for drivers to remove stops that don't need to be performed, and they also are required to mark a reason why they no longer need to be completed. As I mentioned before, those reasons are configurable. So as a business, you can set a list of reasons for the drivers and require them to notify you not only that the order is removed, but also why. I know that some businesses don't allow their drivers to do that, and that's okay. This can be easily disabled on the driver app in case it's only for in case only your dispatchers can make that decision as a business. That's okay. Drivers will not have this option to remove orders, and dispatchers will.
Great. We have another question. What about battery consumption when the app is running on a driver's phone?
Thanks. So the app clearly uses battery, but we do everything in our power to use as little battery as we can. As I mentioned, the app uses the driver's network and also location services. And as you know, from using navigation apps, location services usually take a lot of battery. However, and unlike navigation apps, we have some flexibility when we use location services. So we would try to update as little as we can, depending on the situation. So when a customer is tracking, we would usually use some more of the battery than when a customer is not tracking, because we know that the precision is very important once a customer is actively tracking the driver on the route, versus when a dispatcher just needs to know occasionally where the driver is. From our experience, we have drivers working with the app for a full 8-9 hour day, and can use the phone without charging it again throughout the day. Clearly, it depends on the phone itself, which brand it is and how new it is. but we see our drivers being able to use the phone easily for a full day.
Great. We have another question here. Are all the delivery stages mandatory or configurable?
So I hope I understand the question here. The 3 delivery stages that we are referring to for every delivery is a delivery can be started or what we call on the way, since we provide the customer with visibility into where the driver is before they arrive to them. We find this we think this is an important step on the way. Starting an order when you're not yet there. So as a customer, I can see where my delivery, where my service person is before they get there. So that will be the first stage. The second stage is marking arrival at the customer location. Again, this will stop the tracking and for reporting purposes later, if you want to know exactly how long time-wise and distance-wise the drive to a customer was, you can get that information from checking the time and the distance that passed between starting an order and arriving. And then the last state is complete. Once an order is completed or canceled, removed, failed for any reason, we require the driver to update on that.
Great. We have another question here. Hold on one second. When the driver changes the order sequence, as you touched upon, how are the ETAs to customers taken into consideration?
That's a great question. So when there is a, I would assume ETA to customer, well, ETA to customer can be 2 things. So first of all, there is the promise time to a customer. Each customer can place an order for a different time or for a different window. And when we run route optimization, part of the data that we use is what is that promised window for each customer. Sorry, for each customer, and the results of the route optimization will be will fit the windows for each of the orders. If we allow the drivers to manually, or if as a business I allow my drivers to manually rearrange the orders, Bringg will not stop them from changing, but will flag very clearly any case in which the planned time or the estimated time of arrival for an order is outside that window. But that's a decision, and once starting an implementation, this is one of the key points in onboarding a new business for us, understanding how much room we want to give the drivers to make decisions and how many of the decisions we want to keep as a business, as an operation, outside of the driver's hands. So usually if there are very small and varied time windows throughout the day, businesses will not let the drivers rearrange orders manually, while if there is a very clear delivery, usually a full day delivery window, it's easier for the drivers to rearrange because they don't need to take into consideration driving times and specific promise times.
Great. We have time for one last question. Any other questions that we have, we'll be available to speak after the webinar or answer your questions via email. Can the labels or branding be configured as per my industry?
So some items can be configured on the driver app, especially the color. The color can fit your brand colors. As for labels or text, at the moment they are not configurable. However, we are releasing next month a full SDK for our driver app. So in case you're already using a different app for your drivers, for your couriers, you'll be able to implement some of the Bringg capabilities into the app. If you're interested in that, we do invite you to reach out and ask more about that, and we'll be happy to provide more details.
Great, thank you, Adar. I want to thank everyone who joined us. We'll be sending the webinar recording to everyone so you can send it to others in your organization who may not have been able to join us today. A survey should pop up on your screen momentarily for you to answer a few short questions. Thank you again, and we hope to see you again at our next webinar.